Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Skript tutorial by the one and only LimeGlass. So, today I'm going to tell you guys how to go over the scripting language, how to install it and set it up, and much more. So let's get started. The first thing you'll need to do is to get Skript, which is officially maintained on the GitHub repository, scriptlang/script at github.com. So you can read over all this stuff if you'd like to contribute to Skript. And when there's also relevant links down here for add-ons which extend Skript, and I'll be getting into that more later. You also have a Skript chat, Discord, and there's also a Skunity forums and Discord. And the Discord is pretty popular, and most people use that for help because help is pretty quick in that Discord, and lots of people are there to help you out if you need. We also got Skript Hub and documentation site, and there's also a Skript official documentation which I'll be getting over and out. So the first thing you need to do is download Skript, and there's a releases button down here where we release public jar files of Skript. It used to be at the top here, but GitHub updated and now it's on the side. So if you would like, these are alpha versions, 2.5 currently work on 1.16, and if you scroll down there's 2.4.1, which is a stable release. It wasn't intended for 1.15. Some parts do work on 1.16. You just need an allies update and you should be good. But for this update, I know this version is semi-okay. It has a few bugs that I fixed myself. So the first thing you need to do is hit assets, and then this drop down will come down and you can download the script jar, and then just save that once you have that downloaded. So now I got my test server here. I'm not going to be going over how to install a server because that's a pretty common question, and you can find lots on the internet. So once you have the script downloaded, you just plop it into your plugins and run your server like normal. I will also be using Skewery and Skillet for this tutorial. You don't need those add-ons for most of the syntax I'm using. I just like to have both those add-ons running, which I am both a maintainer and creator of. So let's start the server and I'll be back with you. So now that that's finished starting up, let's go into our plugins folder and our script folder. So this variables.csv is a database file. This is for variables, and I will get into that in the future. This is the default database for Skript. You can configure that in the config.sk, and you also have all these fancy features you can read over yourself. I'm just going to enable this for my sake and tutorial's sake. You can define event priority, plugin priority of Skript. I like to keep this highest just because if I'm using Skript, I want it to be the top plugin. Alright, so now we can close that. Features.sk, this was a feature added by a fork of Skript. You don't need to worry about this at the moment of recording this. And your materials.json is basically your allies. I'll get into that in the future as well. So now you have all these scripts. They are hyphenated here, which means they are all disabled, as this message here says. So these are examples. You can go into homes, which will give you basically a nice example of variables. You can do disabling weather. This is how you disable weather. It's just a simple event. I'll get over all those in a second, so don't worry if you're confused about those. So I'm going to delete all these except the top one, and I'm going to name it example and enter that and clear. So this is Notepad++. It is a good IDE, or in other words, a good place for editing software. especially a scripting language such as Skript. Many people use it. There's also other softwares such as Sublime and Atom. I've used Sublime, it's not bad. They do have a free version of it if you would like. But for this tutorial, I'm using Notepad++, which you can search on Google, and it will be your top result. Alright, and I do have a custom syntax highlighter, which makes things easier for me to understand and you to understand. So let's get started. This is the official documentation for Skript. It's at scripthub.io, scriptlang.github.io/scripteffects.html. It'll be on that repository, the first thing that I was linking at the start of the video, where you download your script jar. There should be a link on that main page. So now let's go to the events, because we're going to start with events. Events basically are things that happen in the Minecraft world that trigger your code, such as when you start swimming, when you start sprinting, when a player spawns, when a world loads, when you shoot an arrow, shoot a entity like a ender pearl or a snowball, when a player moves onto a block, when a player jumps, when someone's kicked, when something grows, and etc. So for our example in this tutorial, I'm going to go over something that's simple but also explains a lot of Skript, which is our on damage. This is basically when something takes damage, and it will be an entity type. In our case, we're going to make pigs fly. When a pig is hit by me in this case, or any player, we're going to make the pig fly and do effects in the air. So an entity type is a mob, an armor stand, a player, anything that kind of moves is considered an entity. There is also a list. If you click entity, you have like wolf, tamed ocelot, zombies, and etc. So the first thing we're going to do is copy this syntax and bring it into our Notepad++. So with events, they all start with the word on. When on something happening. So we're going to paste our syntax. And now this might look confusing, but it's really not that hard to understand. So we're going to look at this syntax, and you see the brackets, these brackets, and these brackets. Consider everything in between it. And this line is basically dividing the two words. So we can say on damage or on damaging. It's up to you which one you'd like. It doesn't affect the code at all unless there's a one like this. I don't have the actual symbol, but it'll have like this or this, and it'll be like picking either one or two. It's the same thing. You either pick one or the other. So we're going to do on damage, and then if you don't define this, it'll consider everything in your world getting damaging. But we only want to look for pigs. So we're going to say of pig. So now you need to indent either with a tab or 4 spaces. In my case, I love to use tabs, and I highly recommend using tabs as it makes your life so much easier. So now that we're inside this event, anything in this area and below will be considered our code that is running. If you can't have it indented like this, or else Skript will say there's an indentation error. You need to have your indentation as a tab or 4 spaces right after your colon. And this is only present on conditions, events, while loops, and etc. I'll get into that in a second, what conditions are. But let's start with our effect. So, an effect is basically something that happens. It's like a void in programming. If anyone knows what a void is, it's basically a one-liner of code to happen. So we can do, like, we can kill our pig, we can launch a firework at our pig's location, we can push the pig, we can, what's another one? We can teleport our pig, and much, much more. So in our case, we're going to add a potion effect. Now there is multiple potion effects. This one allows you to remove the particle effects from your potion that you're applying. And then this one, this one will replace any effect that was already on your pig, such as if it had regeneration and you apply this syntax. These are considered syntaxes, and it'll replace the potion effect with whatever potion effect you are adding. So let's just grab our simple one, first one here, and we have this long line of text. So this area, these brackets, consider everything in between, just like the other one, and these brackets basically mean everything inside of it is optional. So we can say potion of, or we can just remove it completely, and that's what we will do in my case. And now potion, we have different types of potions. You can click potions and it will bring up all the potions for you. We have slow, we have poison, we have water breathing, invisibility, haste, strength, and etc. So in our case, we are going to use levitation. So I'm going to add levitation, and it will be highlighted for my syntax highlighter, which makes things nice and easy to understand. We can put the word potion there. And now we have optional syntaxes inside of optional syntaxes. And this is considered an expression. Anything within these percent signs means it requires you to input something. So now we have expressions, and expressions are basically things that return a value. So let's say we got the health of living entities, and in our case we have our pig. So in a damage event, you can use victim, you can use attacker, and you can use event entity as it involves an entity in the event. But with damage events, you must define either a victim or an entity, or an attacker, or else Skript won't know which entity you're talking about, because a damage event has the attacker and the victim, which are both event entities. So now we can say we don't need a tier. When a expression is in optional values like this, Skript typically will handle the tier, in this case the tier number for us, and it will default it to 1. You can put of tier 2. You don't need the word of because that was also optional, but for grammar's sake it would be nice to have it there. You can say of tier 1, of tier 0.1 because it's a number. An integer is a whole number and it can't be a decimal, but Skript doesn't use integers because of some internal issues that we have to deal with. But yeah, you can use a number there. We won't be defining a tier because Skript will default to 1 for us, and we don't need anything greater than tier 1 levitation. If it was poison, you could add poison 5, poison 100, and that would make the amplitude higher for your potion effect that you're applying. So now we got a living entity. A living entity is basically something that lives. In our case, it's our pig. So we're going to use victim. And now we have 4 time span. This area we don't need because the pig will not have a potion effect on it. So now we can say 4 time span. A time span is basically a amount of time. You can say 5 ticks. A tick is basically, in Minecraft, ticks run the game. They run the coding in the background. And a tick happens every 20 times a second. So this will be a quarter of a second. But we don't want that long. We want about 30. We want about 30 seconds. You can also say days. You can say hours. You can say weeks if you want. In our case, applying it to this pig does not make sense to have it in weeks or years. Simply, if you would like to do something like that where it persists like that, you can use persistent data, which is a new feature that's been added to 1.5 Skript. Or you can use a while loop, and I will get into while loops very shortly or in another video. So let's do for 30 seconds. So now, if we punch a pig, it's gonna float for 30 seconds. So let's jump into the game and see that happening. I almost forgot the main most important part. So now that we have our finished code, Skript will not be able to see this because we loaded Skript with all those default scripts that we deleted. And Skript has no clue that we have added this new one. So what we need to type is our script command. It has reload, enable, disable, update, info, and help. What we need is reload. So we're gonna use SK, which is a shortcut for scripts command, and then we're gonna reload example. You can also do reload scripts, which will reload all your scripts that are in this, or you can use all. And the word all means it will reload your configurations, your allies, literally everything related to Skript will be reloaded when you type all. And that also means that you can't name your actual script file the word all or scripts, and I think Skript will error and tell you about that. So let's type example, and we have our first error, and it would be that I didn't put a space here. So the beauty of Skript is that it tells you everything wrong with your code. that sounds pretty harsh, but it tells you everything. So it can't understand this condition or effect. In our case, we forgot to put a space between victim and for, and it'll tell you on line 2. Yeah, there, that's easier. So in our example.sk file, line 2, we have this error, and it's usually it has an error explaining what's wrong. This one it just can't understand because we put a space in our coding there. So now let's reload it again, and we will see that it has reloaded successfully. So now let's jump into game and see our code running. So now when you join, you'll see this message. If you are an operator or have the permission and you're running a version that is not the latest, Skript will message you when you join. You can disable this in the configuration. I am actually using the latest version, which is a revision 1. There was a critical bug in alpha 6, so there was a revision quickly. This error is popping up because it was a quick edit of this version, and it wasn't posted as its own version, so this message comes up as an error, basically. Well, it's not, it's like an error, but it's not intentional for the Skript developers, us, for this message. So that is a mistake on our end, and it will be fixed in the future. So now we can punch a pig and watch our magical coding work. Woo, he's flying. Very simple, very cool. So now when that levitation expires, the pig will drop. So now let's get into something called conditions. Let's say we only want our levitation potion to happen if, and that if is a segue into this condition. So if condition, basically a condition is something that checks if is true or false. And conditions are right here. And in our case, we can use just an if condition and check if the block below victim is grass. This is basically a expression. You can also use expressions, lots and lots of expressions. You can check if an expression is something. In our case, we want block, which is not working. Block, there we go. You can see you can set a block to air, you can set a block above, you can set, you can clear inventories of a block, you can loop blocks, and much, much more. So we're going to check if a block is grass that's below the player, and then run our code. So let's check that out. Make sure you reload your script. And now if we go over to my stone chunk and punch our pig, you see he won't get levitation. But when he's on the grass and we punch him, he will get levitation. Very simple stuff. So now let's do some fancy stuff. Let's do a while loop. And a while loop is basically if a condition is still true, run this code. Let's do while, and then it would be condition. So we go over to our documentation, look at conditions, and we're going to look if this pig is not on the ground. Let me search ground. There we go. We can see entity is on the ground or is not on the ground. So we're going to take that. We're going to do it right here. If our victim, if I can spell victim, and is not on the ground. And then we're going to apply this. So this is going to loop infinitely while our victim is not on the ground. But let's wait a second. Or wait, what am I doing? So inside this while loop, you need to wait a delayed time. This basically means it will loop infinitely, but every second we need to have a waiting period. So every second, apply levitation and then wait. But we don't want this. We want this here. And now, while the victim is on the ground, is not on the ground, I mean, we need to do something fancy. So I'm going to drop a diamond at the victim's location. Let's look at this drop effect here. So we can bring that over here. We're gonna drop either experience or an item type at a direction or location. This is just a fancy syntax. Basically direction means at something, so we're going to say at victim, and that removes this whole part of this code. So now an item type is either grass or a item such as a shield, a diamond sword, diamond axe, etc. We're going to do just a diamond, drop a single diamond at victim's location. You can do location, but it's the same thing as saying victim here. And with an item type, you can define the amount. So let's say I want to drop 2 diamonds. You have to put a plural there. You can also say 2 of diamond. But yeah, we don't need to drop more than 1. So we're just going to do 1 right now. And let's wait a second here, because if we do this while loop right after we apply levitation, the pig may still be on the ground. So we're going to wait a second for the levitation to affect the pig, and make sure he's off the ground, and then we can do our code here. So let's go over and check that out. So now we summon a pig, hit the pig, and while he's levitating, you'll see he drops our diamonds. Yay, diamonds! Very nice, very fancy. So now I'm going to go over some coding standards. This line here, you can basically say is not grass, and then we can say stop. And this will basically mean if the victim is not on grass, stop this code from down here executing. It's basically good practice to be doing this. If you have lots of if statements, such as like this, it's gonna get hard to understand later down the line, right? So it makes sense for anyone reading your code to have a stop like so. So now we can have this code. What else should we add? Let's also broadcast the location of our entity or our victim. So while he's flying, let's broadcast the location of victim, which is our piggy. So when you do broadcast, this is basically a string, and strings are text, and text need to be within these quotes like so. And then when you have quotes, you also need to have your expression in percentage signs like so. So let's say the location of our piggy is blah, right? And then you can also use color codes as well. You can make it all fancy if you want. Very nice. This will broadcast to the server this string, and if you've worked with YML, you know exactly what a string is. It's very straightforward, but this is like a placeholder. It's our expressions, and you can grab expressions from this wide variety of lists. You can grab like an item amount, you can grab the location of something like we did, you can grab money if you have Vault, you need Vault installed for that. You can grab all the offline players, you can grab the regions, which needs World Guard. You can grab the speed of which the entity is at, and lots more. For us, we're just going to do the location and reload our script, and I will show you in game. So now if we hit our piggy, while he's in the air there, it'll broadcast his location, and you can see his Y values going up very slowly, and he's moving very slowly. But it broadcasts their location, which is very cool and very simple. Alright, so that'll do it for this tutorial. I'll probably go into variables next tutorial and commands. So yeah, please tune into that, and thank you for watching, and take care. Peace.